Been listening to the press conference after the summit with President Trump and Russian President Putin. Good afternoon. Thanks for being with us today for KRON 4 News at 4. I'm Grant Lotus.
Yeah, that big news that we have been following for you. President Trump, a meeting with the Russian president in Alaska. The two leaders, they flew to Anchorage for some high-stakes talks about the ongoing war in Ukraine. Their meeting lasted about 2.5 hours. It has sparked concerns among Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders. They fear that Trump is focusing on furthering U.S. interests and not Ukraine's. Putin and Trump, as you just saw there, just wrapped up a joint news conference.
And joining us now is a lecturer at San Jose State University, Donna Crane. Donna, thanks for being with us to understand what we just saw. What was your first impression?
I mean, this is remarkable on a number of levels. We have to step back for a second and remember a little bit of recent history that this is an indicted war criminal who's meeting with the leader of the most powerful country, the most powerful person on earth, arguably, to talk about a third country that's not there. So it's remarkable. I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it's noteworthy on a number of levels.
Well, President Trump had said that he would walk if it was a bad deal, and he didn't. Obviously, the two of them met. It seemed pretty copacetic. I don't speak Russian, but there was a translator there. So it appears to be promising. Of course, as they say, the devil is in the details.
Yeah, I think not only do we not have details, but we don't even have a broad sketch. And remember, of course, President Trump also said that he regarded this as a sort of a table-setting meeting. That's very unusual. Typically what happens in diplomacy is the table is set by weeks or even months of work with the professional diplomats and the staff before the principals get together. Donald Trump does things a different way. So I think this was a little bit of a sort of a warm-up, if you will.
President Putin noted that had Trump been the president in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, there would never have been a war, which was interesting if you're just joining us. That was noteworthy. President Trump then said that there's no deal till there's a deal, and there are a couple big issues that have not been agreed on. Where do you think these two sides are not in agreement right now still?
Oh, the two sides are very, very far apart. I don't really see that any progress has been made on either side. Putin invaded Ukraine because of this list of grievances he's got, this concern about NATO expansion, and also an interest in his long-term legacy and putting back together the old Soviet Union. And there's absolutely no movement, not an inch's worth of movement on either of those. So this was indeed promising. They certainly seemed to, to act warmly toward each other. I don't know if that's great for the world. I have real concerns that it's good at all for Ukraine. But that's where we are. We're at the, I guess, end of the beginning.
So President Trump intimated in the press conference that the next phone call he's going to make is to President Zelensky of Ukraine, also to representatives of NATO. And we know that that's a thorn in the side of Putin, the idea that Ukraine should ever join NATO. What do you think the message is going to be?
I think President Trump is going to continue to lean on NATO and President Zelensky to hopefully, soften their position so that, look, what Donald Trump really wants here, in addition to, I think, a genuine interest in resolving this conflict, is I think he'd like to be seen as the person who makes the deal, right? So the way you do that is one way you do that is you go back and forth between the two sides, and you try to get each of them to give a little bit each time you talk to them. So that means that when he talks to President Zelensky and NATO leaders, European leaders, he's going to be, I think, pushing them to soften their positions in some way. They also said that one of the agenda items for today's meeting, today's summit, was to see if they could at least broker a ceasefire. So he might be talking with them specifically about that.
Okay.
I do think it was really smart on the part of the European leaders to talk to him before he went to talk to President Trump before he went into that meeting. I think there was a lot of worry that he wanted a deal so badly that he would give away the store.
Okay, you'd talked earlier about Donald Trump wanting to end the war in Ukraine and getting credit for that. Hillary Clinton posted something interesting. She said she would nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize if he were able to end the war in Ukraine.
Yeah. I mean, she's poking him, and I believe she'd actually do it, but I think she's making the offer in jest and not in good faith for sure. I think she's poking at him. It's also worth saying that she, back in 2015, 2016, she was raising the alarm that Trump was a real Putin fan, a real Russia fan, and of course we have seen, as history has borne out, that's proven to be true.
Donna, what does a deal look like in your mind? Does Ukraine have to give up land, and they're going to want security guarantees, but is that going to be anything that people can believe Russia would actually adhere to?
Oh, boy, those decisions should be made at a much higher pay grade and by much smarter people than I. But at least the public position that Ukraine has taken, and certainly the bodies they have put on the line to back up that position, is that this is their land. And so asking them to give up part of their country to a person whom they don't trust in the first place. Imagine America being asked to give up, Florida and Texas and the states in between in order to get some, tentative agreement. I don't see that happening.
Also, Zelensky said it's not really just a real estate deal. It's not so much about the land, but it is the people who live there. Yes, that's...
Of course. And one of the other things that's rarely stated that's a source of this conflict is that, President Putin doesn't want a Western-looking liberal democracy on his border. That is hard. It's hard to keep your own people in line when they can just look over the border and see people who are just like them, who have a very different life and a very different set of freedoms. So I think there is a lot more at stake here than merely land.
So where does this go? If Russia's dug in, they want the land, and if Ukraine's unwilling to give it, what's a reasonable outcome here?
I mean, this is the reason that the conflict has proven to be so intractable, is that it is really hard to envision a solution that could be arrived upon. That I just don't see a political solution to this. So we've sort of been watching, horrified at an attempt to reach a military solution.
So what's your read on everything from a bird's eye view? Is this an opportunity for the globe to exhale a little bit, or does this mean more trouble down the line?
I don't think it leaves us in a worse off position, we the world in a worse position. And so to some extent there is, we can look to the next steps as it's kind of the only game in town, right? So we should all be watching this closely and evaluating the steps as they move forward. However, I have to go back to the point that these are two world leaders, if you consider Russia a world leader, who got together to talk about the fate of a third country that was not at the table. That is, that's really sort of hearkening back to the worst days of imperialism. And so if I were Ukraine, I would be nervous, and they are.
All right, Donna Crane, lecturer of political science at San Jose State University. Always appreciate your time and expertise. A tough topic, no doubt, but consequential for sure.
Thank you so much for being available on the fly here. This came about very quickly, all very consequential, so thank you so very much.
Interesting times. Thank you.
Very interesting.